Good morning, everyone. Oki, Dadanastada, Ambawastich, Tansei, and welcome back. Joining me this morning is City of Calgary Infrastructure Services General Manager Michael Thompson, who will be speaking in a few minutes, and we are also joined by Director Francois Bouchard. I want to start by thanking all Calgarians and all folks in Airdrie, Strathmore, Tsuut'ina Nation, and Chestermere for continuing to do your part in following the outdoor water restrictions as we here at the city work to fully restore water flow since the original water feeder main broke on the 5th of June. We shared some good news about 2 weeks ago that indoor water use could return to normal. And since then, I've had a chance to connect with many of you at community events. It was an opportunity to hear directly from you what had happened in the last little while in your lives. So many of you were saying that you were happy to have done your part to save water, and you were grateful that I was able to plainly explain what had happened, why we needed to better care for our aging infrastructure, and the plan that I laid out to get us there, which included an independent incident review and strengthening of the budget to ensure that this does not happen again. However, as we moved into the second week of July and the rain disappeared and we were hit with a mighty heat wave, your understanding very quickly shifted to concern. I heard emotion in your voices. Many of you expressed frustration over what you perceived as lack of communication, the uncertainty about why it was taking so long to lift these restrictions, and what the risks were that we kept warning you about. And what could you actually do in stage 2 that you couldn't do in stage 3? When could you use a hose to water your garden or your lawn? When could irrigation companies get back to regular service? These were all important questions. I heard you. I had many of your concerns, and I took those forward to the team that was working on restoring water flow. I reminded the city team that regular updates were critical, and those were reinstated last Wednesday on the 10th of July. 2 days later, on Friday, July 12th, I reviewed the communication over the previous week, and it was evident that we needed to do more. There had not been enough clear information or thorough enough information. And recognizing the importance of transparency and timely information, I took some immediate action. This past weekend, I met with our infrastructure team and I asked them question after question until I fully understood the rationale for remaining in stage 3 restrictions, including the types of risks we were assessing and the contingency plans that would address any issues we may find. I also asked for a full briefing for council so we could properly answer any questions that were coming to us from members of the community. I'm here with all of you today because I have enough information to share the state of the Bearspaw feeder main pipe in plain language that answers your questions. I'm also committing to continuing communications with you 3 days a week. I'll be with you Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays until things have moved into stage 1 restrictions. The goal is to keep you informed on the status of the outdoor water restrictions and any other pertinent developments with the pipe and the water supply. So you'll see me again on Wednesday, the 17th of July at 8:30. I'm thanking you again for your patience and your understanding as we work through challenges. Your feedback has been invaluable and it drives us to both improve our service and our communication. So let's talk about water flow and the possible risks that have kept us in stage 3. And again, General Manager Thompson will provide more detail in a few minutes. In a nutshell, the feeder main has been filled with water. And the caution that we are exercising right now is the speed at which we flow water through the pipe. The speed of flow has been increasing over the past 2-week period. And as we have increased that speed, we have monitored how the pipe is responding to that pressure. And because things are looking good at the moment, with only one pump turned on at the Bearspaw plant, the plan is to turn one more pump on midday today to increase the speed at which water can flow. The water operations team will be using acoustic monitoring, and they will be carefully watching pressure increases over the next 72 hours. If there are no issues, it is possible that more information about moving to stage 2 will be available on Thursday. I understand that not being able to water your gardens or your lawns more frequently can be a concern for you, but let me be clear about why we need you to hang on a bit longer. I cannot stress enough that the next 72 hours are critical to understand how the pipe is responding to speed of flow. Turning on an additional pump means that pressure has to be carefully monitored, ensuring that we can identify any issues that may exist. It may be a situation where everything goes smoothly, or it may be a situation where increased speed and pressure lead to another hotspot that will need to be addressed. There are clear contingency plans in place in case of any issues, and this includes having contractors, city crews, equipment, and spare parts readily available to respond immediately. The private sector companies that we rely so heavily upon for this restoration work remain fully engaged with us, and I am grateful for their commitment. I'm now going to turn things over to General Manager Thompson for more information and details on what you can expect in the next 72 hours.
Good morning. We have an important update to share with you today. We continue to make progress on returning the Bearspaw feeder main back into service. Today, I will share how we plan to increase flow through the pipe, which, if successful, will lead to easing of water restrictions. And as we've heard that the public wanted more information following the conclusion of our 2 o'clock media availabilities on July 6th. I apologize for any lack of information. Last week, we restarted our daily updates, either through live streams or media availabilities, to ensure we keep you posted as we move through this situation. On June 5th, we had a catastrophic break in the feeder main. This break was unexpected and severely limited our ability to move water from Bearspaw Water Treatment Plant through the city. While the initial break was being repaired, we utilized a robotic inspection tool to identify 5 hotspots, which were areas of the pipe in such poor condition that they met our criteria for emergency repair before we could bring this pipe back into service. Our priority was to restore service as quickly as possible so we could return to normal indoor water use and ease outdoor watering restrictions. Ever since we started bringing the pipe back into service, we have been monitoring closely for any signs of further issues. As I've shared in the past, we know there are other areas of structural weakness in the pipe, and this has been informed by that robotic inspection, the ongoing acoustic monitoring that we're doing. And it will also be informed by the information we received back from the pipe diver at the end of July. Our monitoring over the last few weeks has allowed us to learn a lot more about the pipe and its condition. As we have carefully increased the pressure and flow in the pipe, we have been monitoring how it has been reacting. We have been measuring the pressure at various points along the pipe, and using acoustic monitoring devices, we've been listening for snaps in the wires that coil around 350 times each 16-foot long segment of pipe. We're particularly focused on wire snaps in the area stretching from where the initial rupture happened to where the repair work was completed. We're not concerned about the sections that were just repaired, but we are watching other sections of the pipe in this stretch. Since we've brought the pipe back into service, we've detected 3 new wire snaps in various locations. To be clear, this does not mean we need to repair or replace these sections of pipe in an emergency manner, but it does mean that we need to be measured and thoughtful in how we proceed. We know people are eager to have outdoor watering restrictions lifted. The key to doing this is increasing the flow of water through the feeder main. The pipe is full of water right now, but it is not moving as quickly as it usually does. By using pumps to increase the speed of the water flow, we will increase the amount of water we can supply to you each day. Right now, we are at stage 3 restrictions. This is because the flow of water through the pipe is only at 55% of normal. At this flow rate, we need stage 3 restrictions in place to make sure that water demand doesn't exceed what we are able to supply. This chart shows how much flow we need in order to move to each stage of restrictions. As you can see, we need a 70% flow to be able to move to stage 1 and stage 2 restrictions, and then a 75% flow to be able to ease all outdoor watering restrictions. Increasing the water flow creates pressure in the pipe, and that in turn can cause stress on the pipe wall. This means that there is risk. After carefully monitoring and analysis, we've decided that we are ready to take a calculated risk to increase the flow. And starting today, we will turn on an additional pump at the Bears Paw Water Treatment Plant, which will increase the flow through the pipe. If all goes well, after we turn on the additional pump, we will be at a 70% flow, which will move us to Stage 2 outdoor water restrictions on Thursday. If things continue to go well, we would then look to move to Stage 1 outdoor restrictions on Monday, July 22nd. And if we get to Stage 1 restrictions and the pipe is operating as expected, we will once again increase the flow through the pipe, which will allow us to remove all restrictions. Like you, we want to lift as many restrictions as we can. Our move today is trying to strike a balance. We're managing the risk between increased water flow, which will help lessen water restrictions, and the pipe's overall stability. One of the risks as we proceed is that we could detect signs of trouble, like additional wire snaps, that may mean we have to stop increasing the flow through the pipe. This could result in a situation where we have to stay in some form of outdoor water restrictions. There's also a risk that we could have an additional failure in the pipe as we increase the flow. Given what we have heard, what we've just all been through, this may be a little alarming to hear. This is part of our calculated risk decision. After analysis, we think that the risk is low enough to move ahead with increasing the water flow. If a new break were to happen, we're ready to respond, as I've said before. We have materials available, contractors on standby, and we can rapidly respond to any situation that comes up. You may also be wondering what Stage 2 and Stage 1 outdoor watering restrictions would mean to you. As you can see from this image, moving from Stage 3 to Stage 2 restrictions would allow the following additional activities. Use of your sprinkler for up to 1 hour per week on a set watering schedule, and use of hoses with a spray nozzle. Stage 1 would mean use of a sprinkler for up to 2 hours a week. You may remember from 2 weeks ago that we used a device called a pipe diver, and you can see the picture here. This device was inserted into the pipe to conduct an inspection of the entire concrete pipe from the Bears Paw Water Treatment Plant to downtown. We are waiting for the results from that inspection and hope to have them by the end of July. We're in the process of installing a fiber optic monitoring system that will be completed in early August. This monitoring system will provide more detailed location information about future wire snaps. We're going to keep you updated as we progress with the installation of this system. As I've shared before, we know that there are additional areas of weakness within the pipe, and it will need a medium to long-term rehabilitation plan. We've started to develop options for what that might look like, and we will incorporate the additional information we're going to receive from the pipe diver at the end of July into that rehabilitation plan. Some options that we're looking in that plan include placing a liner inside the existing pipe, replacing additional segments of pipe which have lower structural capacity due to wire snaps, reinforcing exterior segments of the pipe, or installing a new pipe altogether. We're going to develop this plan in the next couple of months, and we'll be reporting back with more information when we have that available. We're committed to keeping you updated as our plan progresses. Throughout this water event, we've been intentional about balancing water usage and supply. We've been working with businesses to manage their water needs. We know that it has been a challenging situation, and managing through to this point has forced us to make a number of difficult decisions that have led to different impacts on you and on local businesses. I want to thank Calgarians for their assistance as we work through this together. We hope that by giving you a clear picture of our next steps and timing, you have some clarity for what the coming weeks will look like. As I've said before, we're not out of the woods yet. As we move to ease restrictions over the next 2 weeks, we will keep you updated as to our progress and any setbacks we might experience. We'll continue to provide you with daily updates, whether it's through our 2 p.m. live stream or media availabilities, but note we will not have a 2 2 p.m. live stream today because of this media availability. As always, I would like to thank you for your continued support. We know that this has been a difficult situation, and we appreciate how you've come together to implement different water conservation measures throughout this situation. Each of your individual actions has helped the entire community. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Michael. You can now clearly see why we are in an important period of our water restoration work. This is why we remain in Stage 3 restrictions. I am committed to making sure that all of you continue to receive regular information, and the Water Services team is committed to the same, and we continue to work closely with our third-party experts. At the same time that we are in this restoration phase, I know that Calgarians want and deserve answers to what went wrong and how we landed here. I called for a comprehensive third-party review of this incident, which I expect to cover exactly what happened to the pipe, to review the city's response to the water crisis, as well as the steps taken to fix the problem. As a council, we are presently working through those details to ensure that the review is fully arm's length and that it is independent. And I promise that we will get to the bottom of all of these issues. We need to make sure that this doesn't happen again. While we have already taken steps to improve monitoring and to ensure that we have supplies on hand to fix the system should we experience any problems in the future, we can certainly do more. I've promised a wide-ranging examination of the city's underground infrastructure, and I committed to work with my city council to ensure that there's enough of a budget to run a thorough inspection of all underground water pipes. And going forward, I will continue to ask important questions to find out what we need in the budget, so we have technology and inspection methods required to fully understand at all times the state of our water infrastructure. I have also committed to taking our learnings and advocate for all municipalities across Canada. We need a national push to ensure that funding is available to fix and replace vital infrastructure before we see any more catastrophic failures. As I've said before, if this can happen in Calgary, it can happen anywhere. So please stay tuned for that important work. I want to thank you all again for your understanding, for your patience, and your good work at being fantastic water stewards. I will see you again on Wednesday at 8:30 a.m. And now we will turn things over to Jose to field any questions from the media.
Mr. Crouse with Flagmore. Just curious, we've been at 55% for about 2 weeks now. This is probably a question for GM Thompson or maybe Director Bouchard, but what's changed? You know, what have we learned about the pipe that has taken 2 weeks of Stage 3 water restrictions?
Yeah, thanks for the question. So we've really been watching and monitoring the pressure through the pipe and those wire snaps like we've talked about. And so we had heard initially 3 wire snaps in different locations along the pipe, so they weren't concentrated. We've also been learning a lot about the pressures that happen when we turn and turn off our pumps. And so we've really been learning how we can control pressures in the pipe by using various methods of turning on our pumps. And that's really given us the confidence that we can go and turn on another pump today, which will increase the flow through the pipe. If we're going to watch the pipe and see if it's stabilized, if we're not hearing any issues, and if we're comfortable with that, that will allow us to move to Stage 2 restrictions on Thursday.
Is there, 15% jump, you know, you're going from 55 to 70. I imagine that it's probably not just an immediate jump, but I mean, is there any worry there that there's no middle ground? You're going to jump up to 70% right away. Like, is there a 60 in there that you could go to, or how does that work?
This is our next step, and so that's as we've talked about the configurations we have and how we bring pressure and flow back into this pipe. This is the next step, and so we're ready to take the next step. But as you said, it is a big jump going from 55 to 70, and so that's why we've been cautious before we've done this. We've been monitoring the pipe. We're ready to do this, and we're going to be listening to the pipe to see how it responds as we turn that additional pump on today.
Mr. Duple, CBC.
Michael, can you just describe how many pumps does the system involve? Like when you say turn one more on, so that gives you a 15%. increase, is that right?
Yeah, so there's a number of pumps. It's a very complex station, as you could imagine, operating a water treatment plant to provide water to the community. And so within the plant itself, there are eight pumps that are used in various configurations. They have different speeds and different flows, and so it's all very complex. And so over the last couple of weeks, the engineers have really been working to figure out what that optimal combination of pumps is and how to turn those on to really limit the pressure that the pipe will see as the pump's turned on.
Okay. And you laid out the options for the remediation of the pipe, medium to long term. Do you have a sense of the cost range from one to another? And also, as a non-engineer, it sounds to me like you lose the pipe when you do any of that work. Is that correct?
So we're looking at, don't have answers on what the costs for a rehabilitation would be. That will be part of the options analysis that we're doing over the next couple of months. Will be to compare those options, compare what the costs are, and also compare what the impacts are. And one of the impacts would be the loss of that pipe in service. We have other ways. If we looked at installing a new pipe, we could install a new pipe while the existing pipe is running. And so that's one of the things we'll be looking at is the windows that we have to take the pipe out of service, how it aligns to some of those rehabilitation plans, and what options would be to do something different, like installing a new pipe while this one is still in service.
Mr. King with Global. For the Mayor, what more needs to be done to get the third-party review going here, and will the communication from City Hall be within that scope of that review?
So one of the things that we asked for as a council the first time that CAO Duckworth came to us with ideas on how to conduct an independent review was for him to go back and discuss with administration as well as outside experts what a proper timing would look like to do this review, whether we could use a recruiter, how could we make it fully independent. So we have asked for our Chief Administrative Officer to come back to us with more ideas to make sure that this is as independent of a review as possible and to be very realistic in terms of timeframes and what we can expect. There were some parameters that were in terms of reference that we found to be far too restrictive, so we have asked for those terms of reference to not be used, and that any independent review body that was struck would form their own terms of reference to make sure that this is as independent as it can be.
But again, would that include the communication with City Hall?
Anytime we have an independent review, it will cover all of the things that we have done. It will look at what happened. It will look at what our response was. It will look at the communications that have come from City Hall. Again, those are the things that I would like to see in such a review, and the independent review body will ensure that the terms of reference are clear to Calgarians about what is inside the scope of that review.
A response from Build Calgary in terms of the water leakage numbers that they've shared there. What's the city doing with that? Those numbers, shocking when you read them.
So that's a report that we had received quite some time ago when we were talking about off-site levies and having discussions about growth in our city. And at that time, administration had addressed the concerns of industry, but I'll let GM Thompson weigh in on more.
Thanks, Mayor. Yes, we've been talking about this with committee for a while now, and our water loss within our system is very similar to communities around Calgary. So we've talked about the water loss in other communities around Calgary, and the City of Calgary is very similar to that. But we have increased our inspection of our system. This year we'll be doing over 1,000 kilometers, inspecting over 1,000 kilometers of pipe to look for leaks, and we're out fixing and repairing leaks right now. We have over 5,500 kilometers, over 5,000 kilometers of pipe across our network. If you go to calgary.ca, you can go to the FAQ site for the water feeder main break, and you'll see the breakdown per pipe type of the material that we have in over 5,000 kilometers of pipe across the city.
Depati with CTV.
I've been seeing the water trucks going around, watering the plants and the trees. You know, how is the city managing that, and how difficult is that when the temperatures rise like we're seeing this week?
I think when you look at water demand, again, if you look at a daily basis, we're posting what the water demand is, and you've seen a spike in water demand as this last heat wave came, and then you've seen the water demand drop off as the temperatures cooled down. And so obviously there's a correlation that we've always known and that we know between temperature and water demand across the city. We do have that non-potable site open still for pulling water from the river for use by irrigation or contractors, and we are using that and having successful results from it.
Right with Post Media, and then we'll take two more after that, folks.
So, given what you've learned throughout this whole process, and obviously looking at now the potential in monitoring the pipe, the other lengths of it, has there been discussion of a full and complete replacement of that feeder main, given that we know that concrete may not hold for 100 years?
So as we do the options analysis, we'll really be looking at what that condition of the entire pipe is, and that's why we're waiting for that information from the pipe diver that we'll receive at the end of July. That's going to tell us the condition of the entire length of the pipe, and that will help inform the decisions we'll make going forward. So it's too early to tell what we'll do right now.
Mr. Crouse again with Livewire.
What was the capacity of the pipe? Like, what capacity was it running at prior to the break?
So if we looked at the
Break.
So if we looked at the table I showed before, the 100% capacity was around 400 million liters per day.
And it was running at 400 million liters per day?
It would be operating in that range. There was various supply-demand scenarios that the plants would use throughout the typical production throughout the day.
So given the current situation with the water main, will that water main ever operate at 100% again, or is 75% going to be its max?
We're really going to be looking at how the pipe responds as we increase flow and pressure through the pipe. We want to make sure that we're really minimizing the risk to the pipe while making sure that we can serve the community. So we do have redundancy in the system with the Glenmore Water Treatment Plant and the Bearspaw Water Treatment Plant. That's how we were able to keep water flowing while this pipe was out of service, so we can balance the needs between the community with our two plants, and so we'll be doing that as we go forward.
I think we should add something here. Just to add one thing at this point, GM Thompson indicated that there are a total of 8 pumps at Bearspaw. One is turned on right now. We will be turning another one on this afternoon. Typically, there were 3 pumps running when it was at regular flow before this incident happened. So just want to clarify, it's not a matter of turning on all 8 pumps, it's 3 pumps. The other 5 are part of the system, and they do different things that control pressure, and so we are moving up to 2/3 of the speed at which we typically flow, and it's 3 pumps that regularly run.
Final question to Margot of City News.
Sorry, this is a bit off topic, but I've been asked to ask this from a colleague back in the newsroom. Mayor Gondek, what are your thoughts on the Trump shooting, and are you concerned about your own safety? Edmonton City Hall had a recent shooting in Calgary. Is Calgary City Hall safe?
Anytime there's a shooting, it's a reminder to us that we need to be much better as a society, and we need to have much better laws about who can access weapons. This was another call to action on the part of the American government to ensure that they have proper legislation about access to firearms. We take every possible step to ensure that City Hall is safe for all who come here. We know that the situation in Edmonton was one where they reviewed their safety protocols. I can tell you that Calgary's safety protocols are reviewed on a regular basis, and we aim to provide the safest possible environment for anyone who accesses this place.
Thank you, folks. As mentioned, stay tuned for updates all of this week.
Thanks, Mayor.